Then we're going to continue our discussion in the epidemiology studies, okay? And so we have defined epidemiology, types, reason for epidemiology. So right now we are doing studies. So right now we look at descriptive epidemiology. In descriptive epidemiology is asking the question, when, what, who, where. So it's the study of any disease that can provide all this knowledge. When did it happen? What happened? Who are involved? Where did it happen? Example of that is foodborne epidemics, tuberculosis, parasitic infection. So we look at the pattern. The pattern is the time, the person, and the place. Then the frequency looks at the prevalence, and the incidence rate may be determinants or risk factors. Okay. So we move forward. So we're looking at observation studies. Okay, we are looking at observation studies in relation to research question. Okay, so you look at descriptive, you look at analytical. So there are two observational studies. Look at it in that direction. So descriptive is cross-sectional. So in descriptive, you look at the case study. Then you also look at the analytical. Under the analytical, you look at the case control. Okay, those are the things you look at the analytical. Okay. Then we're going to look at types of descriptive studies. Just a minute. So we look at type of descriptive studies. So we have prevalence studies, which is the same thing as cross-section and surveys. So prevalence studies is the same thing as cross-section and surveys. So what it does is to measure the prevalence of the disease. What's the prevalence of the disease? What number of people are having this disease in this particular place? Okay. Then you look at investigation of epidemics. So investigation of epidemics. So then you look at the case reports, and the case scenarios. Just a minute. Just a minute, please. My system is hanging. Sorry, my system is hanging. I just need to. Okay, so you look at the study prevalence rate. In the study prevalence rate, you are looking at, it's useful for assessing the burden of disease within a population. Okay, so it's also the value for planning and follow-up. So if you want to calculate the prevalence rate, you are looking at the number of cases. So both old and new, and the number examined in the same time and place. So if you want to say prevalence, the prevalence of, let's say, diabetes in this region. So if 2 people have diabetes out of a population of 100, you can say that the diabetes prevalence in that place is 2%. So prevalence is looking at the number of cases and the entire population. So another term you also need to take note is the study incidence rate. So when you look at the incidence, you're looking at number of new cases of disease over a specific period of time, over number of persons at risk of the disease over the specific period of time. So the incidence, the prevalence is, okay, the number of people having it over the total population. Incidence is number of people having it over a period of time over those that are at risk. So let's say if 2 persons are having it and 100 people are having it, you're going to look at that 2 over 100. Okay, you can say the incidence rate is 2%. Okay. So this is just like an example to look at, okay, what is the prevalence? Okay, incidence, 2 persons, then this is death. Okay, so the prevalence, incidence, the rate leading to prevalent cases. Okay, so what comes out is either people die or people live. Okay, so the prevalence, incidence precedes. So prevalence is a function of the incidence of the disease and the duration of the disease. Okay, so it's the incidence and the duration that makes up the prevalence. Okay, so let's go further in observational study in relation to research question. Okay, so we've talked this cross-sectional study, you look at case series study, then the analytical study, you look at case control study, then you look at the cohort. So type of descriptive study, we've mentioned descriptive study a couple of times. So case reports, when you talk of a case report, you're talking of unit of study. You're looking at a single person with a disease, that's the unit, that's the case report. Then you look at other terms like limitation. Limitation is what based on experience of a single person. Then also in case report, it provides first clues in the identification of a disease or adverse effect of exposure. Okay. Example is halogen-induced hepatitis. So let's move further. What is the advantages of cross-sectional study? Okay, one is cheap. Is it cheap and rapid? So let's do just our question series. Question series. So let's just move further. Okay. So let's look at analytical studies. So there are descriptive studies, there are analytical studies. In analytical study, we are looking at what? Okay, we are searching for causes. Okay, so we are evaluating epidemiology and laboratory science. So they come together to provide evidence, okay, needed to establish what is causing it. Okay, so that's analytical study. These are just case control studies, but let's move to another important topic. Yeah. Okay. I'm literally. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take examples. We are going to do practical now. Okay. We are going to do practical of how to design this. So we say a team of epidemiologists, we are able to identify a variety of risk factors during an outbreak of a pneumonia or cholera epidemic. So we are looking at analysis, okay? So epidemiology and laboratory science coming together to provide the evidence needed to establish what is causing this problem. Okay, so you see epidemiologists, those that are responsible for disease study, they will come together, analyze the risk factor. So we are looking at a singular case of pneumonia or cholera epidemics. So in analytical study, how do you design case control study? How to design it is you have 2 groups. One is the case group, that's the disease group. Then is the healthy group, that's called the control. Okay, so what you do is that both the disease group and the control group must be merged in everything except disease. So age-wise, they will be in the same age range, they'll be in the same um, um, sex, socio-economic class, occupation, and residence. So you want to study about a disease or study about an exposure. So you're going to bring a cohort. Let's say you bring 100 persons. Those 100 persons should be within the same age range. Those 100 persons should be within the same sex you are looking at, okay? So if you're looking at conducting it for females, both the case study group and the control group should be female. If you are looking at conducting it for male, both the case study and the control group should be male. If you are looking at conducting it for everybody, okay, then you are going to mix it. So you're having, this is the case study group where we are trying to study this disease, and this is the healthy group, okay. Then the next thing is the collection of data is retrospective. So we ask them question, okay, ask both cases and control their past exposure of the risk factor under study. So let's say if you are studying diabetes, you're going to ask them question, what age are you? Do you know about diabetes? For the past 6 years or past 5 years, have you had this incidence? How many times do you have this incident? What are the factors that trigger this incidence, okay? What control measure do you take? Do you have idea whether it's in your family lineage? Okay, is it hereditary in your family? So you ask all those questions. How do you feel? Okay, are you on any drug? The person say yes. Okay, what type of drug do you take? No. So when you take those deals, getting a data from the group, then you are now going to get a data from the healthy group. You are also going to ask them the same question, retrospective question. Okay, so the portion of those exposed to a starting factor in each group is going to be compared. So you are going to now compare, okay, for the case study group, how many has been exposed to this particular factor? Let's say you are studying a disease, you are studying an infection. So you are going to ask, okay, how many of these, you're going to ask them questions. So from that question, you are going to now find out, oh, were you exposed both in the control and in the case study group? So case studies, case control studies, okay, we normally do case control studies so as to use it to actually test any hypothesis or any theory we are putting forth. So any theory you are putting forth, we are using it to test it. To test any case you want to assess. Okay, so we say that cases must be representative. Just a minute. About a disease. If you're going to do a case study about a disease, then you must do that case study within the same environment. Sorry, just a minute. Yes. From the same environment. So that what I mean is this: if you want to study white, then study white. If you want to design something for the whole human race, then ensure that your trials have white, black, let there be a mixture, okay? So control must be representative of all those without the disease and come from the same community or source as the case. So what we are saying in this essence is, if you are doing a study, okay, you want to study the effects of a drug, okay, on people between this age, or you want to study a disease condition, okay, within this period of time, around this group of people, and there are exposures and those things. Now, in that your study, both your control and your study should be people from same community or source, as the case is. Okay, so you cannot have the case study, you use people in America, then control, you are using black people in Nigeria. In case study, you are using white people in America. No, it's not a good it's not a good it's not a good representation, okay, because there may be genetic impact, there may be predisposition, there may be other factors, okay, that may affect the outcome of your results, okay. So just take note of this, is very important. Both the case you are studying and the control, they must be within the same source or community. There must be a control, one or more, for each case. So if you are doing a case evaluation, there must be a control, okay? Any true case evaluation must have a control, okay? So let's just go further. So if you want to look at case control study, you look at your study population, okay? Let's assume your study population is 200. Then you are going to, separate that study population into two, okay? The first population, you call them the case people. Now, remember, before you call them case, they must have had the disease in question. They must have had the impact of the disease in question before you call them the case. Then the control are the other group of people that are healthy, okay? So you separate your study into two. The case, these people has had this disease, okay? The control, these people are healthy. Let me give you an example. We are trying to evaluate the impact of pneumonia on the cardiothoracic integrity. What do I mean? Pneumonia is infection of the lungs, the bronchi, that's pneumonia, okay? Now, you know that the chest and the heart are close by. Then when there is an infection in the chest, it may impact the heart or it may not impact the heart. So you are now trying to study, okay, what's the impact of pneumonia on the maybe heart rate or heartbeat or hypertension or whatever. So what will you do? Your case, they had exposure to pneumonia and they had the disease. Your control, they had exposure to pneumonia and they didn't have the disease. Then under the case, you have a group that had exposure, you have a group that didn't have exposure, okay? Under the control, you have a group that had exposure and you have a group that didn't have exposure, okay? That's if you want to break down on your study. So after that, you move further. Sorry, my system is. So we're doing analysis now. Okay. We are looking at case control, analysis of case control studies. So what this analysis, okay, is we are using it to find the relationship between the disease and the exposure. Okay. So in that analysis, you look at this the disease, this is the healthy, this is the outcome. You look at the exposure. You're going to find out from them, okay, exposure risk, yes. Exposure risk, no. Okay, so disease, okay. These people, are they disease? Yes. This is two controls, healthy, disease. You take note of each of it, then you calculate. Okay, so now You are doing the analysis. You are finding the relationship, interrelationship. Exposure risk is yes. Disease is maybe 5. Healthy is 2. Total 5 plus 2. How many? 7. Then exposure risk, no. Disease 4. Healthy 8. Total 4 plus 8. What will it give us? 12. Then total on the disease is this plus this, this plus this, total of this plus this. So you are using it to do your analysis. Now, in analysis of case control, there's something we call odd ratio. Odd ratio. Okay. What is the odd ratio? The odd ratio is the proportion of those with history of exposure to the factors among the cases. Okay, proportion of those that have the history of exposure. That's what you call the odd ratio. Okay, so we said exposure risk, yes. Exposure risk, no. Odd ratio, A over A plus C. Are you getting it? So we are looking at this total population now. Okay, A, these people have exposure risk. C is still within the same community, but there was no exposure risk. Okay, so odd ratio means we say A with exposure risk over A plus C, which means those with a exposure risk and those with no exposure risk. So that's how to calculate odd ratio. So it's compared to those with history, okay, that is B over B plus D to the factor among the control. So now we are looking at B over B plus D. What is D? B, healthy, exposure risk. There's exposure risk, but they are healthy. There's exposure risk. There's no exposure risk. What happened to them? They are healthy. So you calculate these two, B plus C over B. So that will give you QR is equals to AD. So AD BC, that is the OR, which is what? Odd ratio. So in simple explanation, odd ratio is looking at the proportion of those with history of exposures. They have had exposure to this disease, okay, to the factor among the cases. What's the factor among all the cases? So you look at A, exposure, yes. Disease, yes. You look at it over C, exposure, no. Disease, yes. You'll be able to extrapolate. Okay. So this is an example of odd ratio. The odd ratio for autism. Okay, autism is a condition that has the child has probably like things like nervous breakdown or those things. So we are looking at what's the odd ratio that this vaccine will cause it. Right now, everybody is, a lot of people are like, vaccine cause this, vaccine cause that. Vaccine, if you take vaccine, that means you have taken the mark of the beast, and a lot of theories. So we want to look at the odd ratio. What is the likelihood of this happening? So we are looking at autism. So autism, A times D over B times D. So let's evaluate it. A times D over B times D. So we are evaluating the ratio in relation to healthy people. So let's see the outcome of that evaluation. So you say MMR vaccine, yes, no. Okay. So we're looking at MMR vaccine. Yes. Autism, no, 115. Total, 245. No, 120 and 135. everything 255. So you look at the total, yes, and the total, no. Okay. So what you do is you do 130 times 135, then 115 times 120. Just ordinary simultaneous. Okay. So the odd ratio that vaccine will cause autism is 1.27. So how do we interpret odd ratio? So cancer lung, smoking, 2.4 is high. Okay. Now the 12% confidence interval. Okay. Now, when you look at breast cancer, what is the risk factor? Trauma. What is the odd ratio? 1.9. This is 1.32, 2.9. Infarction, that's death today, the heart muscle death. It's called myocardial infarction. So what is the risk factor for infarction? Obesity. What's the odd ratio? 1.3. Duodenal ulcer. So what is the risk factor for duodenal ulcer? So we are assessing high blood pressure. The risk factor for high blood pressure causing duodenal ulcer is 3.7. The risk factor of viral infection causing diabetes mellitus is 0.9. The risk factor of cancer cervix causing genital warts is 1.5. Okay, just a minute. Hello, Google. Okay, so this is the risk factor, okay? And you calculate the odd ratio. So what's the advantages and disadvantages of case control study? Advantages is that it's good for unusual or rare diseases that are unusual or rare. It's quick to do, it's easy to do, it's cost effective to do. It can use secondary data on disease. So you can go to the hospital, collect people, primary data is the immediate data. Secondary data, you can go to the hospital, collect the data from their files and all those things. It's suitable for more than one risk at a time. So when you have more than one risk at a time, we have 2, 3, 4 risks, you can do it. Can test hypotheses. Hypothesis just means assumptions or ideologies or theories. So you can use this case control hypothesis to test theories. Disadvantage, uncertainty in exposure, the disease time relationship. So there's uncertainty, okay, between the exposure disease time relationship. Okay, number 2, representative of case or control. Okay, the representativeness, that means you can to represent it, there may be issue. That's a disadvantage. Number 3, memory problems. Okay, number 4, rare exposure. Number 5, survival problem can also be an issue. Number 6, bias potential. Okay, there's a great likelihood that during the evaluation somebody can wrongly be biased. Okay, when somebody is biased, he's influencing the outcome of the result based on what he feels. Okay, let's give an example. If they're talking about a disease condition being prevalent in a place, and the guy that place is that guy, he was the past governor of the place, or the past leader of the place, or the past medical director of the place. Okay, you may want to influence the data. Okay, you may say, why at the end of the day, they will just say, why is it that it's our people that are having this kind of disease? So there is a likelihood that data can be biased, okay, especially in selection when it comes to this kind of study. So our time is up. Time is up. So I want you to ask a question if you have any. A question if you have any. Please, can we open the floor for them to ask? So, yes, can we have any question? If they've not opened this thing for you to ask the question, you can use the chat. I just sent hi on the chat. You can use the chat. Okay, let me give us our assignment. Take notes. So let me give you assignment before I'll also open to taking our questions. So today we just assess okay. So you're going to write on a study designed and executed in your state. So whatever state you are in, you're going to write about a case study they designed or executed in your state. Okay, if there is none in that your state, look for another state that is close by. Okay, evaluate a medical case study. Okay, then discuss the so you're going to discuss the cohorts. Okay, discuss and analyze the case and control selections. Okay, so this is the question your assignment you're going to do. So you're going to write about a case study designed and executed in your state, medical case study. Then you're going to now discuss and analyze the case and control selection using what we have discussed about the case, interrelationship about case and control and all those things. You are going to use it to discuss that. Okay. Again, send the email to innocent.ekeleme@gmail.com. And as I mentioned the last time, don't be forwarding articles to me. A lot of people are forwarding articles, forwarding the name of the writers. They are not making any contribution. Okay, so it's an assignment, it's not a forwarding. Okay, so ensure that you look at it, think about it, research, then write. Okay, so any question before we round up? Question, comment? Question, comment? We have just 30 seconds to round up. Any question and any comment? Okay. So in the absence of any, just ensure you do your assignment and So thank you everybody for being part of the class.